If you're an artist that's trying to get on Triple J, I think you've got to look at not just the music department, but look at the specific programs as well that may be relevant to you as an act.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Rodney Holder's my name, and thank you so much for joining me on my podcast here at musicbusinessfacts.com. I really do appreciate you spending your time with me and letting me into your ears. Triple J radio station. If you're an Aussie listener, then I'm pretty sure you know about Triple J. It's the Australian taxpayer-funded national youth broadcasting network. And if you're one of my international listeners, then this episode is going to educate you about what's arguably one of the most powerful and important promotional mediums within the Australian music landscape. Now, in 2018, there are many exciting and innovative ways to promote your music with artistry and without any of the traditional promotional media vehicles. But in my humble opinion, Triple J should still certainly be on your radar as a potentially powerful promotional avenue for your music. Of course, that all depends somewhat on your genre and your demographic, but with over 2 million listeners each week around the country, you'd be crazy not to be pitching your stuff to Triple J. And Triple J is often contentious, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say about the station. All I'll say is that if your music or your message gets broadcast on the J's, then a lot of people will potentially hear your tunes in almost every nook and cranny of this beautiful, vast, great southern land of ours. And as musicians, labels, managers, agents and promoters, that's obviously what we want, right? We want people to hear our shit. So Triple J can, not always, but it can really turbocharge your music career in this country. And this is evident when you look at many of the great and iconic artists that have done great commercially here in Australia over the years, as so many of them can trace their success back to having support from Triple J. Even my old metal band Alchemist, we could see dramatic positive results at shows whenever we received a bit of airplay from Triple J. And when I was running our Metal for the Brain Festival, Triple J gave us massive support with the Triple J Presents, and that really did help us grow our event very, very quickly. So it's a very, very powerful medium. And I guess that's why sometimes Triple J can be such an emotional topic for some Australian music industry people. Because so many Australian musicians and managers and agents and promoters are doing their absolute best to try and get their product on the station, the competition is obviously very, very fierce. But there's only 24 hours in the day, and there's only so many artists that one radio station can play. And at a time in history when there's more bands, there's more musicians, there's more entrepreneurs in the music business, there's more songs than ever before at any time in history, people sometimes get a bit pissed off when they can't attract the attention of such a phenomenal promotional machine like Triple J. So in today's episode of Music Business Facts, I was extremely lucky enough to sit down with Nick Findlay, who is the current music director at the station. Nick seems like a really cool guy, very down to earth, very politically correct, as you imagine he'd have to be. And I tried my absolute best to try and extract from him the information that I could pass on to you guys on what the best strategies were to try and get your music played on the Australian National Youth Network. So please enjoy my interview with Nick, and I'll see you on the other side of the podcast. All right, Nick, well, in my introduction, I would have told people all about you, but for any of my listeners that don't have any idea who you are, mate, can you tell us a bit about yourself personally and tell us what it's like being one of the most influential figures in the Australian contemporary music scene?
I wouldn't say I'm one of the most influential, but I am a part of a great team here at Triple J, which I'm really honoured and have a lot of fun being involved with. My name's Nick Findlay. I'm the music director at Triple J. I got involved in radio when I was about 16. I sort of fell into community radio by chance on the suggestion of my older brother, and got incredibly hooked very early on, and sort of went through a whole bunch of different community radio stations when I was a teenager, and eventually landed at FBI in Sydney when they were launching and becoming a full-time community radio station first up. So I was, pretty lucky to be involved with them, building the studios, painting the walls, really sort of from the ground up, and met some amazing people through there. So I was at FBI for about 3 years. I was a variety of on-air and off-air roles. I then went and did a year study at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. And from there, got some work attachment at Triple J, and they obviously liked what they saw, and I held on, and one thing led to the next, and here I am.
Very good, and you've got that nice deep voice there, Nick. That's good for radio, mate.
Yes, it's very essential.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And I suppose, a few people knew that I was talking today, and one of the things they said was, ask him, how do you get a job at Triple J? I guess that comes up a lot, but really, you're going to talk about, doing the sorts of things you did, right? And I suppose my question is, do you think formal study is the way to go with things like, film and television, radio school and uni, or are you better off immersing yourself in a community radio station and learning the grassroots there? What are your opinions?
Well, look, there's obviously a whole bunch of really fantastic formalized educational structures around the country, be it from schools like AFTRS or private colleges or media arts degrees at universities. But really, I've always thought getting into community radio and getting experience from a volunteer perspective is probably the most valuable thing that you can do. I know that although my year at AFTRS was fantastic, the 6 or 7 years that I did community radio before that was absolutely, essential for where I am. And most of the people that I work with, not just at Triple J, but through my life in the music industry and through radio in particular, I have all sort of had a background which has stemmed from community radio. So I always think involving yourself, whether it be community radio for radio, whether it be, online street press, if you're more into content and online content, getting involved in community stuff and volunteering as early as you can is going to put you in a good position.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for that. Nick, I've got quite a few international listeners, and that's growing, so that's really exciting for me. And I'd just like you to talk to my international listeners for a little bit and just maybe tell them about Triple J and what a special radio station we do have here in Australia.
Yeah, sure. So Triple J is really unique in the international radio market. We've been around for over 40 years, and it started as a part of the ABC wanting to move into a bit more of a youth platform. ABC being the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It's like the BBC, but the Australian version of it. So it started in the 70s as an AM music station in Sydney, moved into FM, became a national alternative music station with a young audience focus, and has since progressed to become probably the biggest national youth broadcaster in the country. We have a demographic of 18 to 24-year-old music-loving Australians from wherever they are across the country, and we have a reach that hits, on average about 2 million unique listeners through Australian radios every week. If you add, people who are tuning in internationally and through apps and stuff like that, obviously it gets to a bigger number than that. But we're really, a huge, passionate lovers of new music, especially promoting new Australian music. And I think our track record of breaking some artists shows that we're onto a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've toured Australia with some of my American friends, and they've sort of said to me, I can't believe that you can get played on a radio station and it gets broadcast around the entire country. That's like freaking amazing, So, and of course, that's why I suppose a lot of people are listening to this, which we're going to get into the guts of it. But I do want to congratulate you and all of the Triple J really from way back, because I know with my own band, I played in a heavy metal band, if you didn't know, and I also ran a metal festival. And Triple J back then were fantastic in helping us establish both the band and the festival. And you mentioned Australian music, which is fantastic, but I've also noticed you're very you're at the forefront of helping women in music, Indigenous music, all different styles of music that never would have got on the radio before sort of Triple J went national. So I guess that goes back to what I was saying to you. I actually do think you are one of the most influential figures, because you're a part of the team, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're leading the team that's picking the songs that are getting played. So very, very powerful position. I was surprised that you only made number 16 in this year's Music Power 50 there.
Oh, look, I work with a fantastic team here at Triple J. Obviously, Gemma Pike is the assistant music director here. We have Carla Ramby, who's our music researcher, producer, and also one of our on-air talents. And then from that, it stretches to our wider group of presenters and producers that work across Triple J in various fields. So while, my title is technically music director, each week when it comes to our music meetings, the entire Triple J music team is sitting down with our core music presenters, our producers. We're touching base and having meetings with our unearthed radio teams, the music programmers from Double J, and we're really pooling all the fantastic music that we're finding and sharing our sort of notes. So, would be silly not to lean on some of the incredible music heads that we work with. So it's definitely not a one-man job when it comes to what the music gets put on the radio.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. No. Well, thanks for clearing that up. Nick, if you don't mind, I'd like to get right into the meat and potatoes because I know we don't have a lot of time and I want to try and get as much value for the listener and the reader if I do transcribe this for them. So let's start with getting your attention. I know that's a question that you get asked a lot, and I've read of not too many interviews with you. You're quite elusive on the internet, really, but there was one I read where you said, if you be active in your scene, if you gig heaps, if you pull out great music, and that's all great advice, and I'm sure most people know that. But there's, I wanted to know, what would you say to the musician or the manager whose artist is doing all of that stuff and they're still not getting the attention? Is it because they don't fit your demographic, or they just haven't been able to break through? I'm just trying to see if you have any sort of response to the musicians that say, well, shit, I'm touring my ass off, people are coming and seeing us, we've got this support, we're great music, but we're not getting on Triple J.
Look, obviously, there is so much more amazing Australian music than we can physically fit on the radio. So that's one, simple sort of equation when it comes to the great body of Australian artists out there making exciting new music and what we can fit on Triple J. So obviously, each week we're looking at all the fantastic music that's either getting serviced to us or that we're finding independently ourselves. And we're trying to really nut out what's the perfect sort of match of what Triple J, what we would like it to sound like on air. So we're going to have a great level of diversity when it comes to the styles that we're hearing, the genres, where the bands are from, the diversity of the artist. And so we may have a song that we really like and we hold on to it for quite a while before we have the room to add it because it's up against a whole bunch of similar sounding stuff. So bringing it back to your question of what an artist can do, unfortunately, I'm just going to have to strengthen my initial comment on this, and that's just not just be as proactive within your scene as possible, but just be as true to yourself as an artist as that you can be. When we're listening to music, it's those artists who are making songs which so real for what they are as an artist that it really impacts us from a listener's point of view. When a band or an act is trying to sort of maybe mimic a sound or go into a direction which is, being quite on trend recently, not being honest to themselves, it really sort of stands out when you're listening to it. It doesn't feel legitimate. So it's just about an artist continuing to grow and progress themselves as a band, as a solo act, as a producer, getting out there, touring as much as possible, engaging as much as you can with your own audience. And if we don't, get service to you soon, if you're being proactive and you're making exciting music, we'll come and find you pretty soon.
Yep, good answer. I liked an old quote I've got here from Richard Kingsmore, where he said, if we're not getting your attention, be proactive and be persistent, but don't be a pain in the ass. There's that fine line. So I thought that was a good one, and that's advice I often tell my students and clients as well. Nick, let's talk about submissions. Like I said, I used to run a metal festival, and I used to get sent hundreds of submissions to play my festival. I can only imagine how many you must get, but I know with my own experience in that, I was very judgmental as a human being. How it was presented to me really made a big influence on the artists that I decided to select for my festival. And I guess I always tell people that story because, if it's a shitty submission and it's looking dodgy and it sounds dodgy, then you're probably only going to listen to 30 seconds of it and then it's into the bin or into the next one. I can only imagine that that's the way it rolls with you as well, because it's only 24 hours in the day and I'm assuming you need to sleep. And is that how it goes?
Look, I don't think it's that important that something looks or comes across as polished. For me, it's all about the strength of the song. Okay. So I could get a band who's completely DIY, who sent me an email from their Gmail account that just says, "Hey Nick, here's our new single. Have a listen to it." If it's fantastic, then that's all I need. Sure, there are some basics when it comes to servicing music to not just myself, but I think any music outlet. You want to make sure you get the facts across. You want to make sure you're pretty concise with telling a bit of a background of who you are as an artist and what you're currently doing. But I never think that sort of bands need to tick a specific number of boxes of, you need to have a great glossy press shot, or you need to have music which is produced in a incredibly expensive studio. If you write a fantastic song and it sounds good recorded on your iPhone and you send it through to me on a Dropbox link, if it's great, then that's all I need.
Okay, but you're not going to play a song that's been recorded on an iPhone more than likely, are you? They're going to have to go to the studio from that point and get it mixed and mastered and recorded.
No, that's not true. If you think back to some earlier King Giz and the Lizard Wizard tracks that we played, which were recorded on about 3 iPhones, it really doesn't matter. Again, it's got to fit the style of the track. Mm-hmm. So if what you're doing is making really luscious, glorious pop music that would benefit from being in a great huge studio, then perfect. If you're making grungy garage rock that you can sort of whip together on a tiny little 4-track, then that's all we need as well.
Okay. And Nick, is there ever a reason why an act should still ever send you a physical CD, or should it always be a digital submission, or what are your views on that?
I like all digital nowadays. It cuts down on waste, cuts down on cost, and it's just easier for everyone. So all I need is an email that has a link to a WAV or a stream, some clear, concise information, and I would much prefer my desk not to be cluttered with CDs like it was in the old days.
Yeah, because they all end up in the bin mostly, don't they?
That's it. Well, we try and recycle them, but yeah, it's a lot of waste.
Yeah. It's an interesting question because when I ask that to people around, the industry, there's a split. Younger people tend to still say what you just said, but some of the older school guys still like to have that physical disc to stick in the car. So I thought I'd ask, and now people know. Nick, is there a digital submission platform that's any better than the other, or like you said, just a link's fine? I'm thinking, Dropbox via a one-page link, via just having it on your website, or it doesn't really matter?
Doesn't matter for me. Again, it's all about what the artist wants to work with. They may have a paid-for account. They may have a free account. As long as it's easy for me to click on and get a direct link to their song, that's all that matters. And
of course, don't attach a massive WAV file that's going to plug up your inbox, right?
Yeah, even an MP3 can tip my inbox over the edge sometimes. So yeah, please try and keep it to links only.
Cool. Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about radio pluggers? Maybe first of all, giving your brief description of what a plugger is, and then I want to ask you a few questions around that.
Well, yeah, there are people, publicists who will promote artists' music to a variety of different avenues, whether it's a streaming service, whether it's a blog, or whether it's a radio station. And so they're people that are working on behalf of an artist to facilitate airplay or exposure of their song.
Yeah, and so I actually know I've got a good friend actually that used to take music in to see Richard Kingsmill every Monday, I think it was, for many, many years. I'm not sure if he's still doing that for you, but he sort of says his role as a plugger, he was like a sort of he was pretty abrupt, this guy. He'd say, we're like a shit filter. He says, if I don't think that Triple J would listen to this, I wouldn't accept it. But if I think there's a chance that, you guys would listen to it, then he might take that on as a client. Does that sound true to you? That kind of role are they playing there? It's sort of deflecting stuff where because you trust their judgment on music.
I don't think that's always the case. I think some publicists have a really good ear when it comes to stuff which is going to have a broad approach, and some not so. I think it all depends on where the band is at.
Yeah.
I think some artists can really benefit from a publicist. It takes a whole bunch of pressure off them. If they're at a level where, they have the financial ability to pay for someone to do that on their behalf, then that's great. It lets them focus on the important things like writing and touring and the whatnot. But really, I never weigh up a publicist over an artist doing it themselves. I never treat them differently. Mm-hmm. You can get on board a publicist or a plugger if you want. Or if you're a DIY band or a manager, you can just contact me direct. So we never look at one over the other. Okay,
that's interesting because humans being humans, I guess what I'm thinking of is that if I'm a friend of yours or someone that you've known for a while, a professional acquaintance, if I say, Nick, you should listen to this is really good, that's probably going to be more powerful than some kid sending you something that you've never heard of. But if you say that's not the case, that's not the case.
Yeah, I look at everything on its face value, and I try and get through everything that gets sent to me. So obviously, it's a lot of listening. But I think a lot of my friends would be able to say that there's been many occasions where they've tried to recommend stuff to me, which has been a terrible fit. So while it is great, and the Australian music scene is relatively small, mm-hmm. So people are obviously talking and suggesting things to each other, and it is a great resource pool, I think, for the industry as a whole. The fact that the Australian music industry is small. It means that we all know each other, that everyone sort of interacts with each other. But if a song is that good, when we hear it, we'll know it's that good. We see record reps, we see radio pluggers, we see bands, we see managers on Mondays and Tuesday mornings. They can come into the Triple J offices in Sydney, but it's not restricted to people who are labels or publicists. I have bands come up on a weekly basis and just have a chat with me. Saying that, it's 2018, and I really don't expect people to come and see me on a weekly basis in person. Again, I don't put preference for seeing people in real life than I do getting digitally serviced. So I would hate to hear, an artist spend money just to come and see me in Sydney to service a track when they can do that for free from wherever they're sitting on email.
Okay. Nick, do you get people doing the publicity stunts? There's the famous one from many, many years ago where I think a band went on a hunger strike outside Triple J until you played their stuff. Does that stuff still kind of happen a lot? I'm just curious.
Not really. I think most people realize that when people sort of try and dress up a song for whatever reason, it's usually because it's not that good and they're trying to sort of hide it a little bit. So I've always thought, let the song speak for itself. A great song doesn't need those bells and whistles surrounding it.
I suppose just in terms of a marketing, just because there are so many great songs, and I guess people are desperate to try and get the attention of tastemakers like yourself, and they might go out on a limb and do different things, and I'm assuming that's why they would do things like that.
Yeah, look, I know some people, get taught those things at various music business schools and things like that. But my one point of advice is keep it simple and let the music speak for itself. If it's not getting the attention that you want it to, let's go and work on the next track.
Yeah, cool. You must have a lot of energy, mate. You must listen to so much music. Can you give me an insight of how many tracks you might listen to a day?
It really depends on the week, but by the end of the week, the songs that I've listened to are in the hundreds for sure. This week's been a little bit quieter than normal, but last week, for example, it was just off the rails. So that's another reason why it's great to get streaming links and things like that, because you can just continually roll through and have a great soundtrack to your working day.
A lot of people listen to music to relax. I imagine you might just get home and go, oh my God, just give me some silence. Is that how it works?
Look, silence is beautiful sometimes, but, some stuff may not make the radio for whatever reason, but there's always music which you find personal and that you can always escape with. That's the brilliance with music. Even if it is your job and even if you're surrounded by it, 24/7, and sometimes you just need to switch off, there can be an old track or an old album that you dust off, and that is your escape, and that's all you need, and that's the power of music.
Excellent. Nick, I'm wondering, when you're out at a party or something and people say, oh, g'day, who are you? And you say, oh, g'day, I'm Nick, and they say, oh, what do you do? What's their response when you tell them? Do you think that people sometimes treat you differently because of this amazing position that you've earned and you're in?
Oh, sometimes, but I guess in all positions, you tend to move towards the people that just treat you as as anyone else. So I definitely don't get treated better than your usual person at a party. I think I just sort of fit in with everyone else. But it's I usually just tell people I work at the ABC. I'm really proud to be a member of the ABC and what Triple J does for the ABC. So I don't think people treat me that much differently.
Yeah, okay. Well, if I owned a club, I'd make sure you're at the front of the line, mate, every time. But that's just
I'm a member of the ABC, so I can't accept any favors in that respect. So
very good.
I'll line up with everyone else.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's a good point. You probably end up on the front page of the news doing something like that, wouldn't you, these days?
Oh, look, I just, I'm not in this position to get special treatment. I'm here for my love of radio and for the love of music, and I'm just really happy that I'm able to expose some fantastic new artists and especially new Australian artists.
Yeah, look, I totally accept that from your perspective, but from many people's perspective, they would see you as someone that they probably want to know and get in front of. But anyway, let's move on. I did want to ask you, because I know we're running out of time, Nick, Do you think Triple J today in 2018 is as relevant and as powerful as they were in the past? With the growing, I guess the digital disruption and the YouTubes and the Spotifys and the social media. I'm just curious: is the station growing? I know you're diverse and you've got Unearthed and Double J. And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been at Triple J now for 10 years, and I feel like we're bigger than we ever have been. Mm-hmm. Our listenership keeps on growing. If you look at the Hottest 100 stats from earlier this year, it was the most voted on Hottest 100 in the history of the countdown, and all of those things like Spotify, social media, and stuff like that. Triple J is always about trying to be at the forefront of where our audience is, and obviously having a young audience, they're immersed in social media, they're immersed in streaming services, so we are actively involving ourselves in being where they are. So I sort of don't consider Triple J just a radio station anymore. We're a content provider, and we're accessed through the FM dial, through DAB, through our apps, through online. So it's all about just working with what the media landscape is, and trying to make it as relevant to what we are as Triple J and where our audience is. So yeah, I'm really excited with where we are Triple J in 2018. It feels like we've got a really good balance of fantastic music, of being where our audience is and dealing with issues that they're interested in, and involving ourselves in the online space as much as possible.
Cool. Does it piss you off that the commercial radio stations often rip you off? Like you break an artist that's they've never played, and then when you get them big, they steal them and bring them over to the...
Oh, not at all. If anything, it just gives more exposure to an artist that is deserving of it.
Shows the power of you guys as well.
Yeah, all the power of the song. Really, I think it goes back to just how we may be the one that first starts playing an artist, but if they're that good, I'm so happy to see them to go on to bigger things.
I interviewed a guy in one of my earlier podcasts, and he ran a festival, and he actually said on the podcast, I think he regretted it because the media picked up on it, but he said, yeah, we look for acts that are on Triple J rotation, and that's how we get them, and that's how we choose them for our festival. I don't even really know where I'm going with this, other than I'm trying to, because I love how you're deflecting, how it's all about the song, and I believe you, but from an industry perspective, and people that I just know, people want to get on Triple J, so it is so powerful. And I guess running out of time, Nick, and you've covered it, but I guess I just want to try and squeeze the last bit of advice for you, because it comes back to that question which you've heard 1,000 times, I'm sure. But and Richard Kingsmill said it great. He said there's not one specific way to get on Triple J, but if you could just give me some steps or some active tips just to wrap up the interview, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So if you're an artist that's trying to get on Triple J, I think you've got to look at not just the music department, but look at the specific programs as well that may be relevant to you as an act. Mm-hmm. So obviously being a rising Australian artist, you should be sending yourself and trying to get in contact with Declan Byrne, our home and host as much as possible. You should be talking to specialist presenters if you fall into something that could fit the punk show Short Fast Loud, or Roots and All with Catchy, and if maybe Linda Mariano is a big fan of what you're into, so you send your new music her way. As I said earlier, we're a huge station filled with music heads, and we're all talking to each other. So if you start getting in the ear of Declan, for example, it will take a couple of days before he comes up to myself and Gemma and the other people in the music team and starts talking to us about your music. So never just think of attentioning stuff to the music department as being the only way to get into Triple J. There's obviously all of our specialist presenters. On top of that, we have the Unearthed digital radio platform, which has had huge success since we've launched it many years ago. And uploading your music to Unearthed and getting exposure through that radio station is a huge leg up as well. And we're obviously closely working with the Unearthed team. So it goes back to being true to yourself as an artist, being as explosive as you can when it comes to being involved in your scene, and obviously also servicing stuff to Unearthed and Double J, our older sister station, which is again, in the last 4 years that it's been active, has had some incredible successes. And what's so exciting about Double J is having an audience that's slightly older. It just means we get more space to program fantastic music, which may have unfortunately missed out earlier on.
Awesome. Well, Nick Findlay, I really appreciate your time, mate. I know you must be a very, very, very busy guy, and I'm going to share this to as many people as possible because I think you've given us a great insight into yourself and the station, and also some good strategies on how to approach trying to get on the station. If anyone was listening to this and they wanted to get in touch with you, mate, is there a best way to do that?
I'm always readily available by email. ABC emails are pretty easy to get across. I probably won't read it on air because I don't want a whole bunch of spam bots, picking it up.
Sure.
But it's no secret how to get in contact with us via email. You can call us as well. There's always people in the music department. We're always readily available to listen to some exciting new music.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really, I guess it was. I'm not surprised, but I liked the fact that you guys are accessible and you can send the music to you guys and there's a good chance you'll reply and I think that's great. So I think people listening to this should be really inspired and don't be lazy and get off and do it and follow all those awesome tips that Nick's given us. So thanks so much for your time, Nick.
No worries. Thanks, Rodney.
And I appreciate also Jerry for helping me sort this out. And you know what? I've got a couple of young artists that I'm managing, and they've got a couple of excellent songs. So you're going to get a couple of emails from me very soon.
Send me some links.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My interview with Mr. Nick Findlay, the music director of Triple J. What did you think? As always, I would absolutely love to hear from you and your thoughts. You can head over to facebook.com/musicbusinessfacts and let me know what you thought. I personally think that throughout the interview, Nick was being a bit coy. I really do think that Nick, as humble as he is and as nice as he is one of the most powerful guys in the Australian music landscape because obviously he's got the power to get you on that radio station and, 2 million unique listeners per week, and that's not including online on all the apps. Very, very powerful. If you liked the interview and if you thought there was some good stuff in there, I've actually created a free bonus that any of you guys can go and obtain. It's basically a recap of all of the highlights of my discussion with Nick. So if you want to go and check out my free report that I've created, I've called it How to Get Your Music Played on Triple J. Head over to musicbusinessfacts.com/Triple J. So I've spelt it out TRIPLEJ. musicbusinessfacts.com/Triple J. Okay, folks, well, I'll wrap up another interview here. Remember, you can also check out all my show notes over at musicbusinessfacts.com. And this week on Nick's show notes there, I've also included a great video interrogation at Big Sound with him and his previous boss, Richard Kingsmill. So if you want to find out more about Nick and Triple J, you can go over there and watch a full hour-long video discussion panel. And my quote for today is this: "In good times, people want to advertise. In bad times, they have to." Bruce Barton. Till next time, people, thanks again for listening. I really appreciate it. And my name's Rodney Holder. I'm signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com. Keep working hard on those music careers, guys. Keep working hard. That's the way to go. Take care.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.